This is Kreskin, and of course, you're going to find out what's on my mind. I'm excited about something I'm going to share with you in a minute or two, but just so you know, my prediction of the results of this current election, I don't know if we should call it an election or this science fiction interaction play that's going on, that's almost like a riot. But all kidding aside, my prediction of what I believe will be the final results and who will be elected as president has been delivered just a few hours ago to Atlantic City, to a broadcaster. You're going to get the full details later on, and it's of course, to be continued. We don't even know if we'll be able to know the results the day or 2 days after the election, but hopefully at least within this year. I'm being sarcastic, but you can't blame me. Now I have to share something with you which I'm very excited about. It's a new book. You don't see me review many books. My library is over 8,000 books, so I am an avid reader. But this book is very special, and I'll give you information if you're interested in how you might obtain it. It deals with the mind. It almost touches me and my work and what I have talked about through the years. But let's learn one thing from one of the wisest men who ever lived, Albert Einstein, when he said, one of life's greatest gifts to mankind is the mysterious. Isn't that interesting? How we valued the mysteries, the unsolved things in life, as one of our greatest gifts. Well, a gentleman has written a book. The title of the book by Michael Jower is Sensitive Soul. And you will find it fascinating, the areas he talks about and shares and covers. Yes, he refers to some of my activities on 4 or 5 different pages, but that's not the reason I'm talking about the book. Let's discuss it in this way. Let me give you an idea of what's behind the scenes in my work. Let me share one of the secrets, not some sleight of hand trickery or gimmicks or what have you. But I learned early in my life the importance of something called empathy, to feel the way someone else feels. Remember the American Indian, one of the great quotes that I heard when I was a little boy was, you don't judge someone until you've learned to walk in their shoes. Well, as he relates in his book, an experience I had during one of my performances, and one of the features has always been that I would tune in and have tuned in on the thoughts of members of my audience, whether they're a private affair, whether they're a corporate affair, or an outside stadium of 10,000 people. And during this performance, this woman stood up in Indianapolis in the audience. I told her the numbers or the date or the name she was thinking of, and then I felt a very ominous feeling. It got almost to my stomach. I don't think anyone in the audience detected any change unless they knew me very well. But I asked her after the program, when the nightclub stage, when my show ends, come back to my dressing room. I'd like to talk to you. The reason I had her return, and when I got to my dressing room, I talked to the manager of the auditorium in the nightclub and said, please get a priest, have the priest come here as soon as possible. The reason I asked him to do that is that I had this strong feeling that she planned to commit suicide. When she came to my room and we talked, it was clearly that that's what she had in mind. But many, many such experiences that people have are really shouting out for help and this is true in the case of a number of movie celebrities that you've read about that intended suicide. They really didn't want to die quite then. They wanted to look out for help, but handled it in such a way that that message never came across. I admonished her to see this priest and give me her word every day for the next week or so. And when I left the area and talked to the priest, he said, "Kreskin, she has done such." Well, that was a feeling of how she felt. But how many times have you or friends of yours sensed that someone was not in the best mood, or sensed that someone had something exciting to tell you, even if it came in a telephone call? This is what this book covers, in part. It's only a small part of this vast voyage of man's empathy, his ability to feel the way other people feel, and sometimes not understand why. You see, I had an office with Dr. Harold Hansen in my late teens and 20s when my touring was not so crazy. My degree was in psychology, but I hadn't gotten it then. It hadn't been completed, and I had him turn over to me patients from his office to mine that I worked with. You know, the interesting thing about Jawor's book is that he points out this is not just human beings. This is animals as well. And I have a great passion for animals. I've had cats for years. I had dogs for years when my folks were alive, because the dogs lived with my folks. But how many times have we read about a dog who found his way back home from another part of the country where he'd been accidentally left or what have you, weeks, days, and months later, ends up at the house where he had lived for so many years? Don't anyone say that this is some coincidental situation. These animals have a tremendous gift, and it isn't just dogs. As he relates in the final chapters of the book, which are spellbinding, is the incidents that cats have had, and elephants, which I can reassure you I know to be the case, because I sat and was lifted by an elephant at a nightclub I worked off and on for a number of years, and this Bertha had a heart of gold, you could tell. Animals have a great sense, as he discusses, of death. When there is a loss, they will often go to something that the person who's passed owned, or go to a room feeling very strongly that something has taken place. And then, how many of you have had this experience, which Jawor talks about synesthesia, and that is interpreting something not the way we see it, but in a different way. There are musicians, famous composers, who anytime they've written music saw the notes in a certain color, a color that they didn't decide upon. It just seemed to be a phenomena. How many times have people you know, or you yourself, when words were said, tasted the words in your mouth? I was interviewed years ago by a person regarding this whole phenomena, and she'd written a book, and as we're talking, I asked her to think of something, and I believe I wrote down either a name or a series of digits. And as she devotes a chapter in her book to, when I showed it to her, I was correct. I had successfully read her thoughts, but I said, I don't know why. When I did this with you, I saw the letters in yellow. And she looked at me and said, Kreskin, I never told you this, but this is when I picture words and numbers. This is the way I see the numbers and that color. There are many, many mathematicians who see certain diagrams in color. So the one thing, when you read this illuminating research of Mr. Jawor, who has researched the emotions of people's responses that are hard to explain, he points out something we need to realize. The mind and the brain are not separate. They are part of the entire body, which is why people can have an experience which he discusses called mirror touch. How many folks have suddenly had pain in their arm and gotten a call that so-and-so had had an injury or had a fall or even graver disaster, or chest pains and then learned that a friend had had a heart attack, or a certain headache because the sun had a blow on the back of the neck. This mirror touch is another form of the transmission of feeling. It's not something we're going to call psychic. It seems to be such a natural phenomena. Listen, there is growing research that talks about when there have been heart transplants of the individual who now is living with these hearts, experiencing situations that the first person had before the translation and transmission ever took place. There's deja vu. Oh, that's something which everybody talks about, where you've suddenly had the feeling, and youngsters are having that more and more, that they've been here before, or they heard this before. Many youngsters today not only are having out-of-body experiences, but they're having prenatal experiences of another life. No, that's not necessarily saying that the person lived before. That's one of the theories tossed around. But something that they either touched or met or what have you, triggered off these memories. And we do not fully understand what is behind this remarkable phenomenon. This book is going to fascinate you. I have rarely recommended a book with this great an enthusiasm. I'll tell you one thing. When you read the book, you're going to find it to be an experience. That's the way I responded.